Good morning to anyone tuning in. I took a little day off yesterday from streaming, but I am back today and ready to do some more painting. And I'm going to be adding color to this piece, which was first drawn in pencil and then inked using a waterproof brown Sharpie pen. I wanted to show, hi Ninja Ferret, I wanted to show kind of what it looks like if you use a colored pen versus a black one. So I already made a copy of this, so I have a version of it in just ink on the computer if I want that later. And it's a fairy drinking coffee, actually, sitting on a mushroom. So she's a little bit of a punk fairy. And I'm just going to figure out, I want to do kind of like a morning sunrise sort of thing. So I'm going to kind of figure that out. So I'm probably going to start with the actual sun behind her because that's going to be really, really light. And I'm just going to start with some lemon yellow and start getting that painted in. And hello to anyone tuning in. I know at least Ninja Ferret was tuning in. So I'm dropping a lot of frames, so hopefully you guys are still seeing okay. So do I have something else open on here? I shouldn't. It would be making it drop any frames. Nope. Just gotta make sure Steam isn't trying to like update games in the background or something, because occasionally it does that. Alright. So I'm going to start with just getting a yellow in here, and then I'm going to build a little more gold colors around the edges. And I think it's going to fade from kind of a brighter yellow to like a more orangey color. And you may hear the kitten in the background meowing because she did not like that I shut her out. And these streams are just kind of me at work getting stuff done that, in this case, Patreon subscribers voted I should paint for my next book. But I will be doing some more formal event tutorial sort of streams coming up. I'm actually going to get Facebook events and get those on my site later today at the schedule, but I'm kind of planning Thursday, Friday, or maybe Thursday, Sunday to do them. And right now, leading in the votes on Patreon for what I should do for those are to do another cuddle painting, which is a tropical dragon, something really beautiful. So I got to think on what sort of theme I want to do there. And then a really wise lung dragon, which is going to be an Asian dragon. So I think that'd be cool because we'll show a good variety. So I thought I'd show something other than a dragon today and actually be painting a fairy. Thank you. Quite often people are shocked that they see me doing something other than a dragon, even though I paint quite a lot of things that are not dragons. I know everyone remembers me for dragons because I've done a lot of projects kind of themed to them, but I like painting all sorts of creatures, and fairies are included. In fact, I actually did fairies and trees and forests and mystical stuff like that before I did dragons. And this is actually the spiked coffee fairy for the Beverage Beast book, so she's enjoying a little extra kick in her morning coffee, and I wanted to make her look a little more punk, which is why she's kind of got spikier hair and a little bit more of an attitude going on. Because who doesn't enjoy some spiked coffee in the morning sunrise? Or I guess it could be sunset, depending on how I paint it, but yeah, if you have lighter elements like the sun in pieces, it's good to do those first, just because you want to kind of preserve the light colors and add the darker colors after. That way you're not smudging darker colors into your lighter colors. Stuff like that. So now she's got a nice sun. I'm going to use some sort of orangey colors, and I'm not going to paint the whole thing. I'm just going to create kind of an edge of brighter color kind of around her. I want to create a border. And then I'm going to blend this with more yellow and it'll look kind of cool. I hope. I hope. Actually, it already looks kind of cool. So, and my first real interest in serious fantasy art came from artists like Brian Froud doing the goblins and fairies and things like Labyrinth. And he did a ton of fairy books. So I definitely like my fairies to have some attitude. Some of the other fairies I've done for this book have been a little more on the, I guess you'd call them the chibi anime side. They've been like really cute little fairies. So this one I wanted to do is a little more of a full posed fairy, just to kind of show that I can do that. And if you're trying to learn to draw things like this, it definitely helps to have a lot of pose books or reference figures you can pose for getting people correct, and have done figure drawing classes and things like that. I waited until I'd been doing art professionally for a bit before I really started doing a lot of figure drawing classes, and that really made a huge, huge difference. And I still feel like it's a lot of work to, because people are some of the things we look at the most often. So I think it takes a little more work to get them correctly. Whereas dragons, you can stretch what the form of a dragon looks like. There's a lot more range there for different types and body shapes and things than if I made the legs 10 times longer on a person, I'd probably be in trouble. I think I'm going to continue this sort of orangey border around the edge here. And I'm probably going to bring some of that orange color out into the background and then have it kind of transition into some darker blues and things. And I do a whole bunch of paintings every month as voted on by my Patreon subscribers, and then they also get to vote on, basically all subscribers vote on generally what painting themes I'm doing, and then $2 and up subscribers get to vote specifically on what tutorials and tutorial videos they'd like to see me do for like the more detailed ones. And then higher level subscribers, they get $5 and up, they get first dibs on buying my originals. They actually get about 20% off. And Introvert says they're watching while going through an online training class to start working at home. That's got to be interesting. Is it just like setting up stuff at home, or is it more how to do whatever the specific job is? I don't know. I don't always work from home, but I don't work from an office. Sometimes I go work from a coffee shop or go outside or something, but of course not right now. Okay. And I feel like my saturation should be up. Multitasking. Oh, you're going to be working for Apple support. That's cool. That's sort of like what I used to do in a not officially for Apple, but I definitely would give Apple a peace of mind about their some of their server things. So the big problem when you work a lot in tech is you learn that in art, if you're trying to do something and make a better version, you usually start with a clean piece of paper and draw it over. You might trace something or have some ideas, but you're generally starting from scratch. But when it comes to operating systems like Apple and Microsoft, basically it's like they've painted over the same painting about 300 times. So there's a lot of issues. And then they try to add things, and especially Apple loves to integrate stuff together. I used to maintain 3 Apple servers and a whole bunch of Windows servers, and I do not miss that job. It was awful. Just the way and reasons why things have issues is just because of sloppy work on the part of programmers who patched things together and thought they were putting in features, and Yeah, I'm very glad to not have that headache anymore. I used to work a lot in tech and graphic design. It did leave me with a lot of skills I can then use when it comes to publishing my own books and stuff, which is awesome. There we go. So that's kind of got the sun there. I'm getting a little ripple on my paper, but that will come out later. I have to be careful to let that dry before I do a lot of other stuff around it, but I kind of want her glowing a little on that edge from the sun, so not so concerned about that. And I'm having a little debate, but I don't think she's going to have natural colored hair, so I'm thinking I might give her green hair and have some fun with it. So I think I'm gonna start on that next. I'll just work on this edge till I can work on the edge that's closer to my paint, since this stuff up here has to dry first. And I think working from home has, well, like any type of job, it's has ups and downs. Obviously, there's conveniences depending on if you have to do meetings or other things. Sometimes your job is more flexible. Sometimes you can work in your pajamas. There's a lot of jokes about people doing serious meetings and only putting on half a business suit because no one can see their lower half on a conference call, things like that. But then you have to have such a balance of when you're working and how much you're working and getting things done. At home, there can be a lot of temptations, distractions, but then on the flip side, it can also be really easy to overdo it with work. I definitely tend to, because I'm my own boss, guilt myself into doing too much work. Um, or I'll just feel cooped up. I mean, this kind of stuff is fun, but there's a lot of parts of my job that can be very tedious. So it's taken me. I've always worked from home in one capacity or another. Well, not always, but the last 15, 20 years, and I've run my own business doing my own art and writing for, gosh, coming up on 10 years doing just that. But so I used to do more commission work and freelance work in there too, and I don't as much anymore. Sometimes I offer certain commission pieces, like I'm offering clockwork pet steampunk pet portraits right now on my website for anybody who wants those. But it's definitely taken probably till like this. I would say this year, this not 2020, but within the last 12 months to really get a balance in working from home for me. And a huge part of it has been figuring out which types of jobs tax me in which ways. So, um, if I'm doing a lot of really tedious clerical work or mentally taxing work, balancing that with work that's a little more fun and relaxing like this so that I don't burn out as fast, that definitely makes a big difference. So I've got her hair and I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to add a little more of a blue green. I'm actually going to use peacock green to her hair for some of the, yeah, that's going to be cool. Some of the highlights and things. I switch to a smaller brush, though maybe not that small. I felt bad. I think I might have chased my boyfriend out of here. He was playing a video game, and I think he felt like he needed to go in the other room while I was streaming, which I told him I really don't mind if he wants to play a game, because he's not working today. So sometimes he's at home with me, and it's kind of nice to have the company, and I get to make us lunches and things like that. And then sometimes it's just me and the feline horde here. There we go. And I think I will give her more natural skin tone. Sometimes I've painted fairies with weird skin colors. You can do blue or green or something, but because she's going to have kind of this crazy blue green hair, I don't think she needs to have crazy colored skin as well. Plus, I just did a weird colored mermaid on Twitch in the last couple streams, so I think we'll do something with regular skin tones for her, which means I have to make sure this is pretty dry because I don't want to end up with green smudging into that. I probably should have done that first, but I wasn't sure the exact direction I wanted to take this. Yeah, I feel like that she looks very kind of chill here, but if you interrupted her coffee there, things would not go well. I think while that is drying, I'm going to switch up brushes and start to work a bit on my background here. And I want to have, I'm using ultramarine blue and what the other color is, cobalt blue here. I'm going to start kind of building up these blues, and I actually think it's fine for them to go over the grass somewhat because this is going to be more in shadow anyway. Trick with a lot of this is going to be working on it before it gets too dry. So I'm going to grab my nice pink opera color and get that right here, and it should blend nicely into that. And probably I'll do the grass in a much darker color because it's going to be kind of shadowed over this, so I'm not worried about painting around it, which is nice. Because I really want this to transition from kind of cooler colors up into like the warmer sunny colors. Thank you. I get told she's pretty. I think she's pretty too. A little punky because her hair is a little punky, but she probably just woke up too. I feel like this is like her morning routine. Coffee with a little punch in it. I'm not sure if it has alcohol in the traditional sense of alcohol we would put in coffee. I think it probably has some sort of fairy thing added to it that gives it its kick. What I want to do is transition this down into kind of a darker green color at the bottom here. The thing that's so wonderful about working with watercolor is you get these awesome fades. Hi, Chaotic Chaos. Yay, we got a lot of friends in the chat today. That makes me happy. I don't know, sometimes I feel like I picked the wrong times of day to stream, but I think I picked the right time. And as I said at the very beginning of this, for those of you just tuning in now, I am going to do a couple more formal, more tutorial-themed scheduled events. Both of them appear to be dragons because that's what everyone on Patreon wants me to do. So I'm going to do something with a tropical dragon, kind of like I did in one of my last couple of streams, but it's going to be a bit more formal. And I actually might do it. I've done a couple of different coddle paintings recently, which are the feathered tropical dragons, and I think I might do one that that is two of them kind of tangled or flying around each other, because I think that'd be a really neat composition. So I think we might do something like that, and I should come up with the exact theme of those. And then we're also gonna do something with a very wise Asian dragon, which I'm pretty excited for. And that might just be a face close up because I haven't done a lot of dragon face tutorials in a bit, and I think it'd be pretty cool to do one with a long dragon and really show kind of like the whiskers and painting all of that. So yeah, this is gonna have a lot of really pretty colors. I just have to get the fades in here the way I want. So I'm gonna put more pink, and the trick is to blend stuff. You're just adding water, so versus more paint. So that sometimes you'll see me put paint on, and then the next time I come back with the brush, it's just water. So I know where Chaotic Chaos is. It's a completely different time. It's, I don't know, sometime in the evening there, I think. Just pretty cool. I know we got a couple people from Arizona tuning in, and then I think I want to say Illinois and Norway, if I'm getting that right, which is really cool. So then I'm going to go yellow at the top so that we can get our little sun gradient going here. And I have a brush hair in there. That's a brush hair, not a cat hair, because it's too small for a cat hair. Nope. There we go. That happens even with the good brushes, like they'll lose hairs, and you're very good at getting them out of your paper quickly. And I haven't been too careful to leave her steam from her coffee there, but I'm going to go over that with white ink at the end. And since I did do this in ink first, I am going to have a nice coloring page on Patreon for it. I did it in brown ink, but it's very easy since I've scanned it to make to up the contrast and make a black ink version. There we go. So I'm just working on the background while she's drying, and then what I'd love to do is just come in. It won't be black with some really dark colors for the grass silhouettes that I'm going to do over this, so they'll really stand out. Aw. I'm gonna make you buy more. I'm gonna do prints of a lot of stuff too. I try to always offer prints of like the pieces people like the most, and but I'm definitely gonna show a bunch more Dragon tutorials since that seems like what everyone's voting for on Patreon. I know at least Dragon Soul is a Patreon subscriber, so thank you. You guys are awesome, and you give me ideas and also help me keep my lights on. Things like that, especially right now because I try never to put all my eggs in one basket. So I do Patreon, I do have an online store, and then I do some events, and then I also do Kickstarters. But definitely at the state of the world right now, having my biggest event of the year canceled was pretty rough. Um, but I'm kind of glad I hedged my bets a little bit because we had a show that didn't go great last year, last summer. But because I love the people running it and I just love the show, I felt like it was the location was just not right for that type of show. But I did get a small table versus a big booth at the end of the show, and then we found out right afterwards that a lot of people felt like it wasn't a good location, so they moved it to a much better, more central location, and it's in the middle of June. So I'm thinking we're going to be hopefully reopened by then. They haven't canceled the event. I think we're all kind of watching to see, but we're expecting to hit our high point on our sickness curve here in Arizona in the next 10 days. And then I'm assuming as that starts to go down the other side, that hopefully we will be back to semi-normal in May or very early June. Um, that seems very reasonable. And I've read 3 separate articles about the curve, and I looked at the actual curve charts. So some of them vary, but they all put it sometime between the 20th and 30th of this month for our peak in Arizona. So that's really good. Which means that since they bumped our largest comic book convention, which is normally Memorial Day weekend, to the fall, I think we're going to end up, and we've had a bunch of other things like our book festival, which was my big event, canceled. I think that summer event's going to end up actually being pretty busy because a lot of fans who would normally get stuff from me in other places or go to these other events are going to go to that convention because um, there hasn't been other stuff. So I'm glad that I'm going to have space there. And I've decided I don't need huge booths at a lot of shows anymore, especially if I'm also a guest or anything. Sometimes I just do the guest thing, but a lot of times I'll do just a small 6-foot table and then point people to the website for more stuff because it's really hard to stock everything at smaller events. And you'll see me rotating the paper a bunch here because I don't want to put my hand in wet paint. That's very important. No hands in the wet paint. Oh, that's cool. If you do a custom frame in woodwork, I'd love to see that. I want to say, gosh, years ago, one of my very early Kickstarters was a project called Clockwork Nouveau, where I was doing Art Nouveau with clockwork stuff. And the funny thing is, if I did it now, I feel like I'd make so much more money doing it. I think I was early in the the Art Nouveau resurgence that kind of, because now everybody does art in that style, but I always have loved it, and I think I did it too early. But one of the things that folks could do was they could contribute to get a new original added to the book, and they could pick like the general creature theme. And this one guy really wanted an angel. So I did this really cool clockwork angel, and I thought it would be neat to do it with, because I was doing full borders and stuff on those pieces, to do it with stained glass. So I did kind of a stained glass background for it. And unknown to me, the person who asked for it, they I swear they did not tell me this, actually was an artist who worked in stained glass. And a while later, I got a photo of how they framed the piece. See, this was going back to framing. There was a reason for this story. And they actually framed it. They made a frame that had matching stained glass panels on either side to the design of stained glass I did in the painting, which I thought was one of the coolest things someone's ever done with my art. So that was awesome and completely unexpected, and a random coincidence since I didn't even know the person worked in stained glass. So I guess you never know. And I did my share of woodworking growing up. I haven't done it in years. I don't really have a place to do it. Um, but I think it's funny when people are always surprised to hear me fix something around my own house. And I'm like, hey, I grew up helping restore a 250-year-old Center Hall colonial house on the East Coast. So I now live in a decently sized 2-bedroom townhouse from the 80s. I can handle like replacing the handle on a toilet or things like that too. Yay, welcome to the chat. Did you just make an account? New victims. New victims from my Discord, I believe. Yeah, Twitch is, I think, one of the better ones for how easy it is to like quickly set up a free account and get to chat. And it's because I'd never used it at all until all this started, and having streamed on other services and watched streams on other services. Yeah, I figured it was Michaela. Michaela is one of my very early art students from when I taught the library here in Tucson. Uh, there we go. My paper's rippled a little, but it'll flatten back out. I'm just gonna keep adding some yellow here to kind of make my fade work a little better, but I think that's pretty good. We're doing a fairy drinking her morning coffee here. Okay, so now that her hair is all dry, I can work on her skin without smudging it. So I'm not going to use a huge brush. So you can either mix colors to do skin tones if you're trying to do like more natural human ones, or you can use like a pre-mixed skin color if you have a paint set that has those. I actually do have a paint set that has like a flesh tone in it. So I've got some in the palette here, which is at least a good base starting. To mix them, you're going to be mixing yellows and pink colored reds, but you don't want to do too much pigment because you don't want her to have like neon yellow skin or something. So, and I'm doing this pretty light because I'm going to do a lot of the stuff with the shadows. Just want a very general skin tone. And I don't feel like that's showing up as well on the camera as it is on my paper. I feel like it still looks white on there. Let me see if I can get this to... sometimes I have this set up and then I have to reset the brightness based on changing lighting conditions. That's a little better. I thought it'd be fun to paint a fairy instead of something else. But yeah, having grown up working on a house that was over 200 years old and had a lot of problems, it's really easy to maintain a house that's like, what's the same age I am? That's coming up on 40. It's a lot less work. But it's also better, I think, than a lot of the newer homes. Some of the mid 2000s homes, they cut a lot of corners or just didn't do the duct work for the central air and heating very well out here in Arizona, which makes a difference here. So you end up with a room that just is always cold or hot, usually over the garage. It's not insulated right or something. So by getting an older home, I ended up with a home with a really good bones. And out here, the 80s is an older home. Whereas where I grew up, the 1880s was an older home, but just different. And if you're new to Twitch and you kind of look around, there's a ton of artists streaming. There's I always talk about the DJs who I love. I believe Vamp Feline is streaming tonight. She is back to health for streaming. She had an eye issue, but it has been resolved, which we're very thankful for. And she is going to be streaming from 7 to 9 Arizona time. So she's on the earlier side here, which I like because I can't always stay up. I saw there's like an insomnia stream she's going to do on Saturday that's like midnight to 2 a.m. And I was like, no, I'm going to be asleep. I love her, but I'm going to be asleep. Okay, so I have some very basic colors. And hey, figured out how to use the adorable icons. Yeah, I can actually put in my own emoticons on Twitch, which is really cool. And you can do that once you reach I guess it's an affiliate, which means I had to have certain goals that we met, which we did in the first couple weeks. I was really happy about that. And then you can do your own icons, and your own badges and your own emoticons, and actually take subscribers on here and stuff. So I figured if I'm working on all this stuff, I might as well entertain people and maybe get some different PR resources for things like Patreon. And I just reworked my Patreon to kind of make the subscription tiers a little clearer, and also just tweak some small things. I had a lot of people tell me that instead of getting two small prints, they really wanted a print and a sticker for our $10 subscription level. So we've just changed that. So every month they get a little bit of each, and then the next level up gets you a whole ton of goodies like keychains and magnets and bookmarks. That stream is amazing. Which stream are we talking? Vamp Felines. Oh, thank you on the Faerie. Thank you, Michaela. It's she's getting there. I'm making sure I have all the skin tone done. And I actually did this with brown ink because it looks, I think, a little more natural for like a sunset sort of piece or a fairy piece. I wanted to show the differences. They used to only make the Sharpie pens, which you may remember us using way back in my classes, in black and really primary colors like bright red and bright blue, which is not super useful for artists, but in the last couple of years they came out with like a set of 24 different colors. So you can do some really cool things with using colored pens. Okay, so as her skin's drying, I'm going to add just a little bit of blush on her cheeks. So I'm going to get some red, but it's going to be really watered down, because I don't want to overdo this and make it look like she's got a rash or something. I'm just going to do a little bit of red kind of on these areas and across her nose, just to take us to a pinker direction. And once this is all dry, at the tips of her ears too, once this is all dry, I'm going to add some more shadows and things in. And I was having fun when I was sketching this out and inking it before the stream. I was catching up on my episodes of Murdoch Mysteries and The Rookie, which are two really different shows that I watch. And it's kind of channeling a lot of the more, I guess, the 90s or early 2000s fairies that you might see at like Hot Topic or something. I used to draw a lot of those, so it was kind of fun to get to do one. Oh, she did the Insomnia stream. Did you do one of those? I didn't know she'd done one already, but I know she's doing one on Saturday, this coming Saturday, I believe, as well. Um, oh, you were at the store and you meant to buy Sharpie pens. Shoot, I'd look on Amazon, honestly, because they're a lot cheaper than they will be at just like the store, unless you're just buying one. But like the store will charge like $5 for 3 black Sharpies. And strawberry kiwi. I don't think that the strawberry kiwi and lemon lime creatures were great for emotes because they're so detailed. I have to pick pieces that I can like make work really small. So that's why I kind of went with the baby dragon. Some of those. Just gonna blend this a little more. She's getting there. Starting to look a little more fairy-esque. I think she's kind of having her morning zen with her spiked coffee, which is probably spiked with some sort of mystical fairy alcohol, and that if you were to interrupt her morning coffee here, things would go very badly. I think she probably has a very cranky streak when she doesn't get her coffee. So I just realized that too when this happens sometimes when I was painting the background, I completely missed the fact that there's a little bit that shows right here that's got to get painted too. There we go. Gotta have it match. Because sometimes they do, well, if it's 3 a.m. your time, it might have been one of her earlier streams. Sometimes they do ones that are like 10 to midnight here, and I think it's 3 hours later there. But I know Vamp Field's actually doing like one that she's specifically doing as an insomnia stream, but then the one she's doing tonight's a little earlier, which I kind of like. So I like that they're offering us options. Because there was a night earlier this week where we had like 3 or 4 DJs going back to back to back, and at one point we were like, "We're sorry, we have to go to sleep. Can't stay up all night listening to music," as awesome as that would be. So I think I'm going to do the mushroom next and then figure out kind of her wings and clothes after that, just because I'm kind of trying to develop the background. And I actually have drawn a ton of mushrooms from life. My first real watercolor workshop, I did 3 days with the world's expert in painting mushrooms in watercolor. So I learned all sorts of things about the shapes of mushrooms. We brought in all kinds of weird ones. They went to the Asian market and just brought us tons of mushrooms. And I learned a lot. I wish I could take another workshop like that just because I learned so much. I want to do it again, ask more questions. But I also love mushrooms. I tend to put them into just about every fantasy or fairy piece if I can find a reason, because they're colorful. They have interesting shapes. This one's not going to be quite as colorful. I'm going to go a little more natural colors with some browns and things, but because of the lighting in this piece, it's definitely going to have some yellows and blues added for shading. And this lower part here is actually lighter on the mushroom. It's white, but because it's kind of going to be darker down here, this is going to be in shadow, and then I will work on that further. But yeah, if I just made it these bright browns, it'd be a little weird because the background has so much blue in it. So I'm going to bring some of the blues into here for shadows just to match. I'm so happy so many people are streaming, though. I think it's such a great way to entertain people and kind of show what we do. I'm doing some of these that are more formal, and then I'm doing just kind of these ones that are just me working. I've done a really weird variety of them. I've done some dragon paintings on here. I did a weird tea drinking fly creature, a mermaid cat. Definitely a variety. And I've been working on inking a really big complicated piece for the Goblin Tea Party. It is a multi-tiered tea party that's very wacky and a little bit different. And then I also want to show some of the I don't know if this is a shiitake because shiitake's curved the other way. It's really weird that I know that, but the edge shape on this is wrong for a shiitake. The colors are right, but the edge shape is wrong. And I'm not sure that they have collars as large as this. I wasn't going for a specific species, or there would be a lot more research put into this, but there are pieces where I have kind of done that. Okay. I'm just going to bring some of my blue in here. I don't want to overdo it, but just to kind of make it sure it matches a little for the shadows I'm going to do. I don't always do full pieces with backgrounds either, so I thought it'd be kind of fun to show that. Sometimes I just do like a creature that's just on a more white background, but or just a slightly shadowed background. But if the creature's really detailed too, I won't do too elaborate a background, just depending. But I felt like if I was gonna have her sitting, she had to be sitting on something, and then I really wanted to have the sun back there, and the rest of the piece just sort of grew out of that. Oh, thank you. Dragon Soul says all the streams I've done are amazing. That's really nice of you. It's more getting used to talking sort of live versus recording a tutorial. That's a little different for me. But I try to sort of include information about what I'm doing anyway. Okay, so I've got that basic stuff in there, and I've got to deal with kind of her wings and the outfit that she's wearing, and I'm just having. I know generally what sorts of colors I want, but I'm not 100% sure. I had a hair on my paper, and I'm trying to get it off. There we go. I think. Go away. Like one hair that hates me. Fortunately, you can take them off pretty easy. Um, yeah, I'm having a tiny bit of a debate as to the exact colors. I want to do some of the things, but I have a general idea. So I know she's going to be wearing kind of brown red. So I'm going to actually mix two colors for that because I want it to be more red than brown. But if I just put bright red on, I think it's going to be too much. So I kind of want to have her in. There we go. I'm going to just tone it down where needed with a little bit of brown. And then I'm going to be adding shading as well with this. I'll do that after it dries. And a lot of pieces like this, definitely there's in the style of my inking and a little bit in the composition, even though I didn't do like a full border. But with the steam from her mug and things like that, there's definitely a tie into my love for Art Nouveau and the style, with very bold lines and lots of fabric, things like that. I love doing stuff like that. So I do want to have some lighter lighting where the sun is hitting her, so I'm going to work on that as well. I'm going to let this at least partly dry because I don't want to make a big mess here. I'm kind of trying to work on this a little bit in sections. And I think her gloves are going to be a different color just so that I don't have too much of the same. I think we want to be able to tell those apart. Aw, thank you. I guess I'm company for Michaela while she's doing homework. A couple of people have told me they've left me on when they're like cleaning the house and stuff too, which is really funny. That it's fun. Sometimes I just talk about my painting process, and sometimes we talk about weird movies or books. I was actually really tense when I was drawing the last part of this because it's not the newest, but it's the newest season of Murdoch Mysteries. They've just been releasing like an episode a week on Acorn, and I was watching the one on there, and as it progressed, it was kind of almost a two-parter from last week's episode because it very much picked up where that one let off. And as it progressed, I was like getting more and more anxious that they were going to do something terrible to the characters I loved for like 13 seasons, because they have killed characters off in that show before. And they often have traumatic relationship issues as well, in amongst the humor and the mysteries and those sorts of things. And I was really convinced that that episode, everything was going to go horribly wrong. And I was getting more and more stressed out. And then it totally stressed me. It all ended up okay. Like they resolved it all like mature adults, and I was super impressed. And Murdoch Mysteries has my favorite, I guess you say, spoof episode of any TV series. Sometimes for the like the special episodes, like the 100th episode of a series, they'll do an episode that's not, even for a series like Murdoch Mysteries that's somewhat funny, but that's funnier. They'll do something that just goes totally outside of the box. And they very much did that for what I think was the 100th episode of Murdoch Mysteries. I think it was 100. I don't think we're at 200 yet. I can't remember because it's been on for a long time. But it would have been the Halloween episode from, I guess it would have been year before last because I didn't see it till last year because we get them a little bit later here. And they decided it would be funny to have the entire town taken over by aliens, which I didn't realize till I watched some interviews that they only get maybe like 2 takes per scene and 1 rehearsal, so it's not a lot. So a lot of their scripts are just general things, a little bit vague. It'll say, that the actors make some sort of alien gestures here, and so the actors had to come up with that, and I thought they did a great job. They're sort of insect-like aliens, and it's completely ridiculous. And Murdoch Mysteries is sort of set in the era when we're transitioning from police on bicycles to police in motor cars and things like that. Like Murdoch still rides a bicycle to the crime scenes, which I think is great. And it's a Canadian show, so you get a little bit of a different perspective historically. And they love to cameo in ridiculous historical characters. So they've had Arthur Conan Doyle in there. They've had Houdini. They've had Tesla. So it's pretty enjoyable. Sometimes it gets a little serious, but then other times it's just completely comical. And the mysteries are really usually very easy to figure out and very silly. So I enjoy that part. Yeah, I think she's coming together good. I feel like it's looking a little. Let's see. Is that better? I just like it looks contrasty. As I say, she's not that red on the paper, but I guess it's just gonna look that red on the computer. It is. It's actually Canada's most popular show ever made. It's been on for like 13 seasons. um, and I don't think they expected that to happen. They thought they were just making this silly little kind of mystery show, and then it took off and has done really well. So I really enjoyed it. So now I'm having more debates about if I want to make things match a lot with her or not. I don't think I want to make a match too much. So I'm trying to decide what color skirt will look the best on here. Where it's going to have a lot of shading on it for sure. But I think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to bring it in with some purples to start with, and then I will add more of my red back in there. I don't want it to match the background too much is the problem. Because right now she kind of is, so might have to make her skirt a lot redder. Alright. We'll just make it a lot redder then. At least take it to the orangier colors. I know a lot of folks who watch Murdoch Mysteries because a lot of the steampunk folks like it because there's definitely a little bit of a steampunk feel to it. Just a touch. And what I'm going to do is add a lot more shadows and stuff on this once I have the colors in because a lot of her skirt here is really going to be in shadow. So it will not look this red or orange. It's going to have a lot of probably some purples layered over it for the shadows, but you got to get the base colors in first. And then I watched The Rookie just because I'm an Nathan Fillion fan, though I do like the rest of the cast as well. I wasn't sure at the beginning of the show if I was going to like it, but it has definitely grown on me over time. So, which I think is in season 2 right now, is what we're watching. There's some shows I love that just stress me out too much, so I have to be really careful which ones I watch in a row because I don't really want to be super stressed out. Yeah, I'm gonna use some blue and purple in the shadows, but mainly for like her dress here, it's gonna be purples. I'm gonna use a color called Moon Glow, which is kind of a blue purple, but it's a little bit grayed down, which will be better for doing shadows and things. So I just want to get the base colors there, and then I'm going to paint a whole bunch of shadow colors across this whole area. I have to let it dry a little bit first though. And the reason I do that is because I need to have the lighter colors show through. So I do what will be my lighter colors, and then I put shadows on top, but I don't cover everything, so parts of them will still appear. And I'm going to shadow the mushroom more too. Okay, so I think what I want to do is introduce a little yellow up here because that edge is going to be more lit. This. I'm just going to add a little yellow to the top of her legs here where I feel like the sun is going to kind of start hitting it. And that's what happens when you pick up orange from your background. Because I didn't wait for things to dry enough. Fortunately, it's easy enough to blot out. There we go. I do still use graphite watercolor. It's watercolor that's made from pencil graphite, and I'll use that more. I was talking I should do a piece in just that on here, or just that with a little bit of color. I use that more for like a piece just in that. Unless I'm doing like a stone dragon, then I use that a lot. But I don't tend to use a lot of blacks or grays in my pieces because it takes away from how vibrant they are. And I prefer to keep them a little more on the vibrant side. I'm using a more toned down indigo blue here. It's like she's kind of wearing a gypsy outfit, which wasn't my intent when I painted it, but somehow that's how it turned out. So that's kind of funny. Oh yeah, I can definitely think about doing a stream for that. I don't know if that's going to work for. I was trying to figure if that would work for either of the dragons I'm going to do. But I feel like I have to do really just a project with just that. I did a really cool one years ago where I did 3 dragons where they were all painted with graphite, so it looked like pencil, but it was paint. And then I used color just for the butterfly they were chasing, which was kind of cool. So I would definitely. I've had that. I mentioned that in a stream I think last week that I want to do something more with that. Okay, so I think now what I have to do is figure out at least a little bit of what I'm doing with her wings here. I think I'm going to start them out with a very pale blue, and then I'm going to put some other colors after that. She's pretty cute though. I don't make my fairies have completely human-y faces with then pointed ears stuck on them. I tend to give them a little bit of like more elongated features and different face shapes, different noses than I think I would for like a human in a piece. And when I first started doing watercolor, I did a ton of elves and dryads. I love painting tree fairies, so I did a lot of those. And I debated on this if I wanted to have it be more of like a close-up of her, kind of her face and her holding the coffee, or the full body, but I thought it would be good to show kind of a full body one. And this is one of those pieces where it's really going to look so-so until I get to the very end when I can add in not just the shadows, but all of the highlights. They're really gonna make it pop. I'm happy to see a bunch of people tuning in. That always makes me happy. Especially if you guys come in and ask questions, because sometimes we don't have anyone asking questions, and then it's just me rambling like a weirdo for an hour or two. And I used to be super self-conscious about it, and now people tell me that like it's really meditative to listen to me, and I'm like, I don't know where that's coming from, but I'll just go with it. I'm trying to decide. I think her cup here is going to end up being quite a bit darker. So I'm just going to start off with some brown, and then I'm going to eventually use a much smaller brush and really darken it up. Just getting there. Okay, so, and I think I mentioned a stream the other day, like figuring out which size brushes to use for which things. That changes as you get more comfortable with painting and based on your personal preference, and it just takes time. So this is why I use Moon Glow for shadows, because it just works really well. It's a combination of some blues and purples, and it's kind of a little grayed and a little muted, so I'm sure it's got some black in it, but it's still going to be more vibrant than me just painting this with black. Which the only time I do that is if I really am doing something that's very kind of graphic and comic book looking in nature, where I maybe have black outlines and I'm trying to match them. So now I'm just working on adding a lot of shadows to her clothes here, because I feel like she's a bit light and I really want her skirt to stand from all the Kickstarter choices. Are you talking about on the coloring book Kickstarter that I just finished? Oh, speaking of which, you're going to be really happy because there's a whole stack of packages I packed up yesterday from the big Kickstarter that we did with all the hand-drawn books, and I'm almost done mailing all the ones where people get volume 1 and 2 of Dragons and Other Rare Creatures, and yours is in there in the stuff that's getting picked up today, so you will have it in the next 7 to 10 days, depending on the mail. Oh, thank you. I love being told that people love my stuff. Not that that sounds kind of ego-y, but a lot of times for artists and writers, we don't get a lot of feedback, and sometimes we have to work on things for projects that aren't going to be out till 6 months or a year ahead. So we don't really necessarily get to hear feedback on the previous projects before we've even started the next ones. Like I'm already working on pretty hard on my picture book project, and I think I might stream some of that. I need like 15 to 20 paintings for it, and I've got 3 or 4 done, so I'm actually making good progress. And that is super cartoony. It definitely has sort of a Last Unicorn era influence to it, if you're familiar with the animation in Last Unicorn. It's just a different style of art, so I'm pretty excited to show that. Wow, what was my second project? My first one was, I know my second project was, I want to say Elementals. It was the Elemental paintings. My first one was the very first how-to clockwork book I did that we later revised into a much bigger, better book. Um, I definitely learned a lot. I still feel like I learned, though. I'm always trying to put in there. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in this. You're basically getting Dragon Soul's getting 600 pages of creatures showing up in the next 10 days. So, and I know it's taken me a while with those ones. It's because I'm doing drawings in each book. So, like when I get out, say, 10 of the books in that pledge tier, that's actually, or 10 of the rewards in that pledge tier, that's actually 20 books, because each of them is 2 books in it, all with hand-drawn stuff in it, so it just takes time. Once I'm through those, I think the rest of it will go a bit faster, and I'm completely on schedule. I'm so glad I put like an extra, I was worried that I might be tired from Festival of Books, so I put like an extra 2-3 weeks on my timeline for drawing in the books and made some of those a bit later on the schedule just to be safe. And then Festival of Books got canceled, and I ended up getting really worn out running around doing everything else. So trying to catch up on stuff and have the other Kickstarter going and kind of run sales and just make sure my business would keep going and that we had something to do with all the extra stock from Festival of Books because that was pretty rough. So one of the cool things you can do is like if I've layered in shadows and I decide that they're not red enough or not saturated enough, I can come back in with my red on top of those and brighten areas up. So you can kind of go back and forth when you're building color. But I definitely want to make sure that her red orange sort of skirt here stands out from things like the sun and the other colors. So I'm just adding a bit more orange to it. The funniest thing that's actually ever happened with me doing projects near Christmas that mail for Christmas or, within a month of Christmas is I've had at least 3 people tell me that their rewards never arrived. And then when I told them when they came and that they were, in one case, even signed for, they checked and actually they just had like 10 packages come because they were buying Christmas presents for people and they just put them all in a secret hiding place and didn't even check and their rewards were totally there the whole time. And that's happened like 3 or 4 times. So I always kind of come back at people and go, okay, it shows it was delivered on this date. Can you go and check? Because this sounds weird, but people often just stick stuff away for gifts and don't realize which things they are. And it's happened enough that we always check. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. I'm definitely getting some rippling on this one. And I will have to flatten this back out afterwards, but I think she looks pretty good. I was trying to get her skirt in a little bit better lighting. Let me see if I can adjust my light a little bit here. There we go. I was trying not to get shine from the light where the watercolor is wet too. Yeah, but people have had like the strangest things happen. There's definitely like, I mean, if you think about the fact that I send out somewhere between 80 and 200 to 300 packages per Kickstarter, and then I've done 40 of them. It's not very many that have weird things happen, but it's a small percentage, and it's pretty funny some of the things that have happened. My favorite one actually relates to fairies, and it was where a hardcover copy of Fairies of the Forest showed up for someone who had backed it, and that was all that showed up. No package, no bookmarks, nothing, just the book in mint condition in their mailbox. No address, nothing. We don't know what happened to I mean, obviously they must have had a package with an address to know where to take it to. I don't know if somebody opened it thinking they could steal something but then why not put the whole thing? And we were totally baffled. And since the book was the most expensive thing, I just sent them new prints and bookmarks and accessories and things. That was kind of a relief, but we were pretty sure the fairies were actually involved because it was such a bizarre thing to have happen. And then once and only once have I had a hardcover book so severely damaged that it was bent in half, which I can't even do physically. Like fold a hardcover book in half, like all the way through both covers. I don't know if they ran it over or what happened to it, because I always ask for photos if I have to replace something, and that one was really weird. And that was going just to Texas. It was going one state over, so that's one of the oddest postal service things. Like, okay, I send stuff all over the world, and the one going like one state away gets bent in half. So I do budget for a couple of replacements and things like that with the Kickstarters, because I package stuff as well as I can, but even if I were to charge everyone $5 extra for packaging, it might not help it if it's going to get bent in half. I don't know what the heck would have helped that one. So there's no point in charging everyone a huge amount extra when it's only an occasional book that has something like that happen. So I try to do reasonable packaging, and then we go from there and figure it out. So I'm just working on her wings now. And I'm actually going to bring a little bit of the same red from her dress. I try to have colors sort of connected in my pieces, especially when you have things like wings that are going to pick up the colors of what's around them, just so they feel kind of connected and united. So I'm going to bring a little bit of red in with my blues here, just to give her some really pretty wings. And I'm going to be adding a whole bunch of highlights when these are dry too. I just have to wait for that part, which is kind of inconvenient, but I do want some more shadow here as well. Anywhere where, whoop, don't drop brushes. Anywhere where stuff's a little more away from the light or overlapping so that her outfit stands out correctly. It's getting there. And I feel like her gloves here are going to need some shadows. And she actually has kind of bindings around her little half gloves, so I'm going to do those in brown probably, but I have to kind of wait to do them last because I don't want them to get smudged. Thank you guys all for like hanging out. Well, I guess it's not morning for everyone, but for me it's morning. Hanging out and having me for company. I figure I do it as often as I can with work, since I'm working anyway, and then you guys get to be a little bit more of a part of it. So I'm trying to get this so that her legs will be on camera. So I think she's actually going to have orange and white. It's either going to be orange and white or orange and red, but I think it's going to be orange and white kind of socks on. And this is definitely a holdover to my love of kind of goblins and fairies of, I guess, the 90s, because 80s and 90s, because this type of stripy sock was really popular back then. Some of the stripy socks go way back even farther in fairy art, and definitely the little red caps you often see fairies wear, those go really far back. And actually, some fairies, it's really creepy. The fairies referred to as red caps, their caps are supposed to be red because they are stained with the blood of their victims. So maybe those ones don't mess with. And I love all the kind of mythology related to fairies. That was definitely a factor in what got me interested in drawing and painting them and other creatures. And I studied a little bit of mythology and archaeology in school, and then didn't end up getting a degree or staying in school, so I try to figure out ways I can use all of the things I'm interested in my paintings and in my writing that goes with them, which I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of that. Hopefully, today's Monday, and the next day or two for. I want to post some previews from this book for Patreon subscribers, and it's been more kind of getting the last book out and the coloring book out, and then actually having the time to kind of work on the layout for this book, because I can't really preview pages until I have locked down the fonts and things for it. So I started on that, and I'm hoping to get to that maybe some more this afternoon. After I make us food, I'm making some sort of just pan-fried chicken with mashed potatoes, and we have some awesome whole wheat pasta salad I made yesterday that's been chilling, so that should be good. We have some leftover asparagus from these weird tacos that I made, so we're gonna have that as our veggie. I made asparagus, shrimp, and beef tacos with like teriyaki flavors, because when you keep us cooped up at home like this, what happens is I started experimenting with weird recipes. Luckily, my boyfriend is a pretty good sport about that. He'll eat most things, so I don't know if that's I'm a good cook or just that he'll eat most things, but they turned out better than I thought for my first try. So we haven't had a lot of trouble getting stuff for meals. I know some people said that they have. I know some of the canned food has been out at Safeway, and some of the like pasta aisles just been cleaned out. But I don't always do that much with white pasta that I would get there. Sometimes I use I use brown rice pasta in the pasta salad I made last night, and they've had that in stock at Trader Joe's. And actually, nothing has been out of stock at Trader Joe's, and their prices have been really. So I'm like, that's weird. No, the first shopping we did when stuff got crazy, they were out of cat food, and then I got a lot of weird brand of cat food online that was too expensive just to be safe. And then they've had cat food ever since. So I probably shouldn't have spent that money, but I don't want to end up being eaten by my cats for being upset if we run out. So better to have it and not need it, right? Yes, the digital copy of the fifth coloring book is going to go up for Patreon subscribers this week, and it will also go out to a lot of the digital copies. Will go out on the Kickstarter surveys too. The issue is I have to have them locked down first, which means I have to have any extra stuff paid for. So people not doing a lot of extra payments, I'm gonna get them their stuff sooner, but I don't want to lock down too early, so probably early next week for the stuff on Kickstarter, just because if I don't require lockdown and payment, what happens is somebody can get their digital reward for their coloring book and then go back and change their survey answers to a different one and get that one, which is not how it works. And I make them pretty low cost to begin with. And I'm not sure that most folks would, but you're generally supposed to make it all locked down so you don't go nuts. So they're all going to go out very soon. The only thing I don't have ready for digital copy yet are the mini ones because I'm doing a few new pieces for them. And they also need to be laid out, which is pretty quick. I laid out the cat one already, except for the new pieces, because I wanted to do a test one. So the mini ones will go out a little bit later. And I'm not sure if anyone really cares about having a digital copy of the mini ones, because so much of the art is a repeat from the others. Some of it's new, and some of it's going to be close-ups. But I figured I would include that for anyone buying the physical copies. I'm excited. I might bring some of the mini ones places with me because they'll be so portable that if I get stuck somewhere waiting for something, I usually have sketchbooks about that size that I take with me, so that was kind of a contributing factor to my choices for having a smaller coloring book option available. I think for parents too, if you're taking kids places and they end up having to wait for things, having something that's not hundreds of pages but is a little thinner and a little smaller is as a portable thing is a good idea. Oh, well, it won't matter if you end up with a choice. It'll just you'll just have the option to download it from either place. You don't need to put a note in the survey. It'll just do that. It's because we always include the digital copy with the physical one. So if you're getting a physical one, you are going to get it free on Patreon too if you're over a $5 subscriber. But by being a subscriber, you also get extra stuff on the Kickstarter because I want to make sure that you guys still get extra stuff. So you're going to get extra prints on there as well. Yeah, I try to always, if you're supporting more than one thing, put extra stuff in. So you'll notice I kind of let my colors bleed together weirdly on her wings, and I love kind of those happy accidents. In watercolor, I love the kind of more random patterns, so I'm letting it do that on purpose. So sometimes I'm being very controlled with my painting, and other times I'm just letting it do whatever it's going to do. It's sort of like setting some boundaries and saying, within these, have fun, paint, and do what you will. Aw, I'm so glad you're. How old is your sister? She's pretty young, right? Um, we're not having a way to distribute copies to other people, but I could potentially. Because, I mean, I don't mind people who want to like print extra copies, but I might be able to come up with something if you want extra copies like for specific folks, what we might do is add them as a separate backer so they have a place to download them from. We'll have to figure that out. Because I've done projects early on in my Kickstarters. I did offer like ways to pledge for yourself and give a gift, but very few people did it, and it ended up kind of being a hassle because collecting a second address was weird for actually shipping stuff. Um, but we'll have to try to figure something out for that. I know you've supported a lot of my projects, so we'll see if we can come up with something. The reason I'd want to have it kind of under their email address is so that they can go directly and have a way to log in and download it versus you having to send something around, because you can't always forward something, and I don't encourage people to repost the books. I mean, even privately on other places, because they're usually pretty big files, and that can cause issues. And so we will try to figure out a way to do gifts. I mean, it might be something where you figure out if you want to buy it for them how much it would cost, and then I'll just set them up with as a backer where it's prepaid and they can just go download it. Or I might be able to just send you a link. I mean, if you're just looking for like the newest one, I think if you're a $5 and up subscriber, you're going to get that one anyway, and then you might be able to. I just don't like people to share the links around because there are unfortunately unscrupulous bootleggery people who post them all over. And I've checked what people charge for prices on things, and I actually charge way under for digital copies. Most people, I've seen people charge like $25 for the digital copy of a comic book that's like 40, 25 pages, 30 pages. And I'm like, that's really high considering I only charge $12 for like a book and will include the digital. Like, I feel like if you're buying the book, you can just have the digital copy for free. And I do something similar on Amazon. If you buy books, I include digital copies. I don't put digital copies of my coloring books on Kindle because I don't think you can print off Kindle. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I sometimes offer them on my website that way. I might be able to do something with my online store actually, for you because it does. I haven't used it much, but this newer online store you switch to does support downloads, so I might be able to set that up. Those are always tricky things to figure out, like the digital distribution of stuff, and they have it much more figured out for music than I feel like they do for books. They sort of do for books, but it's still kind of weird in some areas. So even though her socks are white, there's going to be a lot of shadow on the white. So I'm just figuring out for her little stripy legs the shadows. She's getting pretty close to being done. This last part is just going to be all about highlights, and then I need to decide what I'm doing with the grass in the background here. Oh, thank you for saying it's nice that I do that. I don't want to be greedy with what I'm selling my books for, but then again, I need to like pay the bills and things. So my thing with digital stuff is I think if you're charging a fair amount, people are less likely to try to bootleg it anyway, especially if they know you're the person who created the art and that you're going to try to keep creating more in the future. I think they are less likely to try to steal it than if it's like a movie where they're charging a huge amount of money for it and it's from a studio with like I think it's just a perceived value. Well, like I will buy a movie for in digital copy for 5 or 10 or occasionally even $15 if it's new and I really want it. But I'm not gonna pay like 30 or $40 for it. And I noticed recently with everything going on, they've done like in theater rentals. So I thought it was a really funny thing for perceived value. For me, those are really overpriced, but for a lot of my friends, they're saving money because when Daniel and I go to the movies, we usually go in the morning, so it's the cheapest showing. And in total for both of our tickets, it's about $13. So when I see like an in theater rental and the movie is $20 and I don't even get to own it after that, I'm like, that seems way more money than I want to spend. They could do one thing if we also owned the movie, but I'd rather just wait in 3 or 4 months and then buy the movie for that much and own it. But then for my friends who have kids, they're used to taking like 4 people to the movies. So, and they are used to going more in the evening. So for them, $20 is much cheaper than buying 4 movie tickets. So much of it is about like the perceived value. Aw, what add-ons does she want a lot of? I wish I could make some of the things like the stickers cheaper, but because I actually have to buy sticker paper and cutter blades that wear out and things like that, and then actually spend the time having the machine cut them. I'm gonna batch it, but there's gonna be a lot of cutting going on. Hopefully while my boyfriend's at work, because the cutter's a little noisy and I try not to annoy the heck out of him with it. So now I'm just working on my grass here, which is super exciting. And I'm just using kind of the same blues and greens I already used, but a lot darker. I decided to do that versus black simply because I didn't ink this picture in black. So I feel like if I went to black with the grass silhouettes here, it would be a little too contrasty. So I'm just using like really, really dark blue, which I think looks pretty. So that works. And a lot of this piece, what makes it look good is going to be in my last probably 5 minutes of working on it when I get to add all the highlights and things in. That's when it's going to really pop out and come to life, which is kind of my favorite part. This has been really fun to do because it's a little different than the other pieces I've been doing the last couple weeks. And we've been super enjoying watching DuckTales. That's been kind of I think DuckTales and Shaun the Sheep, but I ran out of the new season of Shaun the Sheep on Netflix, which I think is the best season they have ever done of that show. It's so good. Aw. Well, I will totally be offering prints of this piece. Thank you. Is that I don't get to do that many fairies, so I try to offer prints on these just because it isn't something you see me do a ton of. Well, except when I was doing the whole book of them, but that just wasn't it's so funny, it wasn't as popular as any of the other stuff I did. I feel like I always come up with ideas like 6 months or a year too early because recently all I get are like emails going, "How come you don't have any Fairies of the Forest decks left?" I'm like, "Because that project was a number of years ago." Yeah, and we finally sold them all. I even had them marked down for a while because they weren't selling. And now, of course, everybody wants them way later. So that's what always happens. It is a lot. It is a lot to color. If you get the books, because the coloring books are the first 4 are 70 pictures or more in them, and then the newest one's 80 pictures or more. So they're single sided, so it ends up being like well over, you're like 150 to 170 pages, I think, in those. Um, just so that you're not destroying stuff on the back when you're coloring the front. I hate when coloring books do that. As a kid, that really bugged me, so I opted not to do that with mine. But yeah, and there's no repeat art in them, so you get a ton of creatures to color. Somebody was asking me which one had the most dragons. I'm like, I don't know. I think they all kind of have a good distribution of them. The smaller ones I'm doing kind of more on a theme, so that if you want to give a gift that's just like the cats to color, that's an option. And I'm excited to get to do a bunch of different ones because my publisher is not going to charge me setup fees. I thought we weren't going to get to do the mini ones because the product didn't raise as much as I would have liked. But then again, a lot of people don't know what's going on with their jobs right now, so I'm kind of thankful that we made our goals. And then my publisher said, no, we're not charging our normal fees, which is I usually, when we publish a book, I may have to pay editing, which I still would do on other things, but I don't have to pay it on coloring books, which is nice. If I have to have an editor, I have to compensate them in some way, whether it's with artwork or money or both. But then the actual publishing costs that are in addition to printing, there's usually a setup fee that's between $50 and $100. That's only because I can do all the digital layout stuff myself. So that's just them, I don't know, processing the file automatically and they get to charge that much. But I think it's to keep people from just randomly publishing terrible stuff all the time. Like they have to at least pay a little bit to do it. And then I usually have to buy the ISBN numbers for each book, which run about $20 a piece. So I usually estimate it's going to take at least $100 for like just the publishing costs on a book. But because they're waiving those, now it's probably going to only cost me just the ISBN numbers on those, which is really good. I like cats too, very obviously, and I do put a lot of them in my coloring books. I think I like most animals though in some form. I'm not likely to keep every type as a pet. And I do love our cats. They're super weird, which I think makes me love them more. I think cats are total weirdos a lot of the time, which is awesome. Getting close on this. Oh, I thought it'd be cool to put in all this detailed grass, but I did think it would be cool, so now I have to do it. I think this is the busiest my chat's been during like a morning painting. At least, unless it's like an event that I've set up more formally. Some of the formal ones then I actually do invites on Facebook so people really know they're going to happen. And I'm going to try to set up 2 of those. And I've just been debating. I know I want to do one like Thursday. And I don't know if it's better to do early afternoon or later afternoon or do mornings. I don't know. It's so hard to guess. I mean, I prefer to kind of paint this time of day, but maybe if I'm doing like a weekend one, I can do that. I don't know. I usually am thinking people are going to be at work, but then again, since we all work from home right now, maybe that doesn't matter. I don't know. It's confusing. And if I go too late, then people in the 3-hour time zone it doesn't work. Well, this one probably will be for sale because it's a bigger piece. A lot of the smaller originals that I do, this is 9x12. On the ones that are 7x9 and 8x10, those ones are usually for Patreon subscribers specifically. Because I have to do a lot of the ones I've been doing on the channel are for those because I have to do, I think we're at 8 a month now, which is a little ridiculous at that size. So that's 8 more pages and books done every month, and those originals have homes before I paint them, which is amazing. And I'm super thankful for that. But this one's gonna probably go up in the Patreon subscriber store in the next couple weeks. I have a bunch of them I have to scan, and I try to do updates often. We are doing a thing where if you buy anything at all from my online store during the month of April, you will get entered to win the Clockwork Dragon we did for the first Twitch event. We're just giving that original away. And it doesn't matter how cheap whatever it is you buy, if you've done anything in April, you're going to get entered. And if you are a Patreon subscriber at $5 or higher, you're also automatically entered. Because those are the folks who really help me survive right now. You guys are amazing. It was a huge challenge before Patreon of figuring out how to cover monthly costs while I was doing art for books because I couldn't always sell the art until I had like a Kickstarter or a show or something, and that made it really hard. So, well, we'll have many coloring books available like in the future too. They'll definitely be on Amazon. And I will try to stock some. They're a little cheaper to stock, so I should be able to stock some. I want to definitely have them stocked for the event that I'm going to be doing in June, assuming that happens because it's an anime con, and I think mini coloring books with those themes will do really well with anime fans. Here we go. So I think she's really close now. I want to take some of that same blue and actually add it into her hair I'm going to have it pretty watered down, but just to add a little more shadow in a few places. And then pretty soon I get to do highlights. So one of the reasons this piece looks so vibrant is because I didn't use any like really blacks in it. I've kept all of the shadows in blues and purples. And then I also inked it with brown ink instead of black ink. And sometimes I don't ink them at all. Which one are you asking about that you haven't? Oh, the Clockwork Dragon. You didn't get to see the colors because I think that stream was still up. I downloaded a copy of I download the Twitch streams to make sure that we have copies of them because they only stay up for 14 days, and I'm slowly reposting them on YouTube. But I don't like to hog our internet while my boyfriend's here because it really hogs the internet to upload like a 2 gig file. So I'll have to repost that. But he's actually shown in color. I think I posted him on Patreon, and I think I also posted him on the front page of my website where we talk about the giveaway. And I am going to have prints of him too. Yeah, I'll have to update the print store. I try to put the prints in the Patreon subscriber store for at least 2 to 3 weeks first. And I knock a little bit off of them. It depends, like which size print, how much I can discount it, but I do try to offer like all that stuff at discounts, not to try to make you guys buy more, but because um I want to have a way to like say thank you. Hey, you guys are supporting me every month. So if you do want to own a piece of my art, whether it's an original or a print, I want it to be a little more affordable. Realized I really want to make the steam coming up from her coffee here stand out a little more. So what I'm going to do is paint it really yellow, a little bit of the oranges. I'm not really worried about keeping any white showing here because I'm going to paint over this in white once it's dry. Pretty close to being done. I think we just have 2 things left. One of them is the highlights, and the other one is that I really need to paint her bracers. But yeah, I try to the way back in the early days of me doing prints, I would try to do small ones at home and then order batches of 25 for larger ones. And then once I started to have more than 3 or 4 paintings I wanted to have prints of, kind of became an issue having to invest in like and store 25 copies for like the bigger prints of everything. And I can't even imagine trying to do that now because I have so many pieces that I offer prints of. So I invested, I think I'm now on my second one because I finally wore one out, but I invested in a really good large format inkjet printer for home that uses archival ink and it uses 8 different colors. So they're not cheap, but it definitely helped my business, and it's why I can do a lot of the things myself. And then previously, until the last couple months when I did stickers, I could do like stickers that came on pre-cut sheets, so like square or round stickers, or cut stickers by hand, which was a lot. Or I would order them from a place like Redbubble, who does give me a discount as the creator of the stickers, but then I'd have to batch order them, so I wasn't paying a lot of shipping. So yeah, starting about 2 months ago, I did invest in a cutter so I can do die cut stuff from home, which has really been cool to be able to offer that. I was mainly doing that for the festival because I thought we'd kind of make the money back there, which didn't happen. But it's not really anybody's fault that things just happened the way they did, and we cope the best we can. Okay. So first thing I need to do is get this thing to. I'm just gonna stretch it out here. You can actually kind of bend your paper back a bit because you don't crease it if it's rippling, but this one rippled more than most because I did a whole background, so I'm gonna have to really flatten this out later. Fortunately with this paper, given like an hour or two, it will just flatten out completely in the back of like my pad of paper that's underneath, so that won't be an issue. And I'm just going to add a few more, like I think her lips, I want a little more pink in there, so I'm gonna darken those. And I want a little more shadow in her ear here. Those are just like the final tiny things where you're like, that needs to be fixed there and that needs to be fixed there, and she needs a little shadow, just a little bit on her face here, just before I add my white highlights that I'm getting ready to do, and that'll finish us up. Okay. So I'm going to start with her wings because they've had lots of time to dry, so I'm going to turn it sideways so I can rest my hand not on the painting. And I'm actually going to put some of my white ink into the lid from my paint jar because it easily cleans off later. Just so I can thin it down slightly because it's a little thick. Okay. Now with fairy wings, if you're going for kind of a butterfly or an insect wing look at all, it really helps to kind of use white ink to get that sort of translucent quality to it. Just trying to get my white ink to be the consistency that I want. So I'm just going to be adding some outlines and some highlights to really kind of bring her wings to life here. And it's these last details that kind of make the whole painting come to life. I don't feel like it really looks amazing until you get to do kind of your finishing touches. And normally this is where I would be doing like the sparkle in her eye too, but her eyes are closed. Or at least she's looking down, but I think her eyes are closed. She's kind of enjoying her. It's like her coffee's like when you close your eyes and inhale the steamy smell of tea or coffee that you love and say, ah, that's kind of her moment that she's having here. I didn't really plan to draw her with her eyes closed. Just when I was sketching her, she kind of came out that way, and I thought it was pretty cool. So I can't really emphasize enough the fact that the more that you draw or paint, the more comfortable and relaxed and natural it feels, and then you learn to kind of let go and just let pictures turn into what they want to be. There's definitely a freedom I enjoy with the kind of things we do for Patreon that I don't get if I'm doing like a commercial book cover where we have very, very specific goals. We have general guidelines from Patreon, the type of creature, sometimes whether it's cute or scary or what it's doing, but I still kind of like let the picture kind of develop more naturally than I would for a more specified project, and I really enjoy that a lot more. Oh my gosh, hobby paints are expensive. I used to do miniature trains growing up, and we would paint the buildings and stuff. I mean, again, your paints last a while, but yeah, it's because they're usually a type that's designed to really withstand a lot of wear. So whenever I think of the miniatures that people paint, especially for games, now I always think of the ridiculous one from this weird little indie film that is my favorite film about gamers, at least tabletop gamers, and it's called Unicorn City. And it is the story of a young man who hasn't done a lot with his life, but loves playing role-playing games, and he wants to get a job working for his favorite role-playing game company, which in this is called Bards on the Beach, I think. I'm trying to remember, it's kind of a spoof on Wizards of the Coast. And in order to do that, he has to do something to impress them. So he tries to create a real-world version of the tabletop role-playing game they've been playing in the form of kind of a LARP, which is live-action role-playing. But I can only describe this if you've seen Clerks, if Clerks were trying to do like a movie about LARPers or something, it's really funny. At one point, one of the guys makes his centaur costume, so the back of the costume for his horse parts is actually a cooler full of beer and Thai food, and I thought that was really funny. Um, Yeah, if you're like an RPG fan, definitely check out Unicorn City. It's a weird little indie film, and he has like a minifig with a huge sword that that is shown a lot in it. So that's what miniature and hobby painting always makes me think of Unicorn City. I don't know where I think Amazon recommended that one to me because it was long after I worked at the video store. When I worked at a video store in my early 20s, I used to kind of snag the previous screener copies to watch of any weird little movies that came in because it was really fun. Because they were either so bad you could make fun of them, or you'd find these amazing films that most people weren't seeing. And now a lot of places like Amazon and Netflix are kind of producing those little films, and you can find some weird, cool little movies that turn up. Amazon's my favorite for recommendations because they recommended two movies to me that were not well-known movies. In fact, the only other people I know who've seen them were also had them recommended by Amazon. But they are two of my favorite movies. One of them is called Frequently Asked Questions About Time Travel, which is, I love time travel movies and stories. I didn't set out to love them, but a lot of the movies I like, Groundhog Day, Happy Death Day, have either days that repeat or weird time travel in them. I love this weird made for TV movie called 1201 from the 90s, which you can find on DVD. It's amazing, which is kind of like the action movie version of Groundhog Day. So, yeah, frequently asked questions about time travel, and then not so much for all ages, a movie called Suburban Gothic, which I love to make my friends watch because they're kind of like, what the heck am I watching for about the first two-thirds of the movie? And by the end, they're like, this is the most satisfying movie, but it's such a strange movie. It's comedy horror, but it's a really weird indie film, so I love that one. So Dragon Soul saying they play a miniature game called Malefax, if I said that right. Huh, steampunk meets Wild West meets gothic horror. That sounds cool. I don't really have time to play a lot of games. Some computer games a little bit, but yeah, tabletop games, there's no time, which is really funny because I've actually made my own tabletop game that I sell. Do I have time to play it? No. I mean, we did when we were playtesting it, but I don't have time to play it anymore. It's kind of sad. Plus, a lot of the friends I used to play games with have kind of moved away. Definitely my biggest gamer friend moved away. Not very far. She's just in Phoenix, but we don't really hang out and play games anymore, so sad. But yeah, I don't have the time or money to invest in RPGs or CCGs. Or I used to be a big Magic the Gathering player, and I was pretty good at it, but I don't have time to do that anymore. But definitely the art for Magic the Gathering in the 90s and Dungeons and Dragons and all the spin-off books, so like the Dragonlance books, that was a huge impact. Covers of Dragonlance books definitely was the first place I tried to look at something and draw and copy it because they had dragons, and I don't think I'd ever tried a dragon before that. So that's cool. Yeah, put one of your unpainted minis in Discord. There's so many people doing minis right now. I will say that I kind of regret the fact that I did not buy a copy, though I think you can still get it on Amazon. I just don't have the money or storage space. But I didn't buy a copy of the Ghostbusters board game only because it has like really nice minifigs of like Slimer and stuff in it, and I just want it for the minifigs because I think it's like a four-person cooperative game. And really, honestly, like if I get time away from work, I usually want to see a movie or go dancing, go hiking, do something physical. So I don't end up. I mean, I do play some computer games, but I don't end up really having the time to play board games or that much of the desire to, just because I sit so much for doing things like this. I have been really good though for the last 4 days. I've taken a walk every day. And one of the days I took like a huge like walk all the way down our wash by my house. So that was really nice. I think I hit between that and the DJing that night, I hit like 11,000 steps or something ridiculous on my step counter. But I'm trying to make sure I balance things out and do that more. Take breaks from painting occasionally. Try not to take breaks from work to work on other things. Sometimes it's bad. It's like, I'm going to take a break from work, and then I end up working on some other project, and I'm like, no, you were supposed to not work. I guess that shows that I love my work sometimes, though. Oh, that's awesome. You're taking a walk every day after breakfast. Yeah, I try to go pretty early because it can get hot here later, but it's been staying really cool, which is nice. So we can still go at like 9 or 10 in the morning if we want to, but we usually go 7-ish for a walk because it's not as many people out. Everybody in our neighborhood's been pretty good about social boundaries and keeping distances, and everyone's out walking their dogs, but we don't get too close to each other. It's kind of weird. All that fun stuff. And then sometimes I take a little walk in the evening because again, it's staying pretty cool, which is what Tucson is normally like. But the last 2 or 3 years, we didn't get any rain after like early March, and it just kept being like really hot, really early. So I'm really happy that this year is actually giving us a break. It's some good news and kind of being more normal. I think we'd go a little more nuts. Dragon's telling us about the weird character that he's playing, the weird possessed character. Um, God, I haven't done role playing in a really long time. I did as a young teen, 13, 14. The truth is, like, I never really enjoyed it that much. I definitely like watching like D&D games or other role playing games more than I like being in them. I generally don't like being the center of attention, so that's probably why. I think a lot of my friends who like doing karaoke or acting, they love it a lot more. But for me, I've always been like kind of a background person, so I enjoy watching them. It's kind of like having a play, but I'm not big on the actual role playing part. That's just me personally. I definitely tried to get into it as a teenager. It just wasn't. I was a pretty shy teenager. I've gotten a lot better now, but we had a group that used to meet a bunch when I was probably around 13. Played what would have been second edition Dungeons and Dragons at that time. For a long time, though, a lot of my neighbors and other kids in my neighborhood, they weren't allowed to play D&D because it was considered dangerous and evil. Because I grew up in the 80s, and especially where I grew up, there was like a lot of things about. There was basically somebody who went nuts and killed their family who happened to also play Dungeons and Dragons, and he lived in my neighborhood, which is way out in the middle of the country, so just a random happenstance that I lived near that guy. But that definitely made people be like, it was because of this, because they always find something to blame. I'm pretty sure that guy was just nuts anyway. But that definitely made like a lot of kids weren't allowed to play it. We were allowed to my parents kind of trusted us. They would usually check out whatever we were doing for a little bit and then be like, yeah, it's fine. And they usually watch movies before we could watch them if they weren't sure that about violence or stuff like that. But yeah, a lot of our more traditional neighbors, Dungeons and Dragons was a no. Oh, I got a first edition of D&D in the red box. That sounds like is it a reprint? It sounds like a reprint because I don't remember for maybe there was. I mean, I know there was a red box one that was really early. I think I was one of the few people when Stranger Things came out. I got kind of mad because they didn't show 80s D&D correctly. Um, they showed them using the wrong dice for early D&D games, and they also didn't show them playing the way people play D&D. And I was like, it's like they're checking the nostalgia boxes, but they didn't really get the accuracy correct, which was kind of upsetting. I think she's pretty close to done. I'm trying to see if there's anywhere else I need highlights. It's probably one of the early ones then, if it came from your dad. Can tell by what type of dice are with it too, if it has dice with it. Because Yeah, it wasn't until the 90s that you could kind of pop out to a gaming store and buy D20s and things like that. They were not something readily available. And a lot of the early role playing games just used standard six-sided dice. So that's something they definitely got wrong in Stranger Things. A lot of early D&D did not use minifigs. Another question mark we have, like minifigs were not as available. Definitely not until like the later 80s, early 90s. And most importantly, if you're going to show kids playing Dungeons and Dragons, you have to have the most important thing, which is that when you're playing and you get to the end of your adventure, you don't just all go home for the night. Yeah, the dice might have been a separate thing, or they would have just been normal dice. It was from 83. Um, but yeah, nobody gets to the end of a D&D game and is just like, great, cool, that's the end of the story, let's go home. No, the first thing is like, what treasure did I get? What rewards did I get? Did my character level up? And then you spend like an hour trying to figure that out, which was the part of the first two versions of Dungeons and Dragons I didn't like. Now it's all done on the computer, even if you're playing um, a tabletop game. You usually have like apps and things that'll just, you got this much XP and you could track your character. But we used to do it all on paper, and you could spend like an hour figuring out and scrubbing and with an eraser to change and update your character sheet. So I feel like they kind of left the whole "what experience did I get" part out of Stranger Things. I thought that was really funny because that was kind of the biggest deal. You're always trying to level up your character. Because I played like I think once in the last 20 years for a little bit, but I really don't. I don't really have a lot of desire to do role playing. It's definitely something I tried out and it wasn't for me. I'm not a big fan of karaoke either. I'll do public speaking for like panels or here on Twitch, but I think a lot of people do have fun. Dragon Soul's talking about the backstory of his character, and coming up with the backstories is pretty awesome. So yeah, I think this is pretty close to done. I don't really think she needs a lot more highlights, or I'm gonna end up kind of overworking it. I'm gonna add just a couple on her face, like where her mouth is, just to kind of sparkle that up a little bit. But I think she's pretty close to done. I might put a few little firefly highlights in the grass here because that's kind of cool to do. And then I think we're gonna call it done, and I can go start making my pan-fried chicken and mashed potatoes. So if you guys have comments, questions while I'm doing my last tweaks here, I am super happy to answer them. I'm thrilled we had so many people coming and hanging out. You guys are amazing. And I try to stream every day or two on Twitch. I'm gonna put up some more formal events, like I've mentioned a couple of times. We're doing, probably it looks like a wise Asian dragon, like a wise lung dragon, and then a really pretty cuddle piece. Like I kind of streamed one the other day, but I'm gonna do a more in-depth tutorial and set up some events for that. And most of the pieces I stream, I'm doing PDF tutorials with a lot more of the details, like exactly what colors I use and how I do like the original drawing that I'm then painting over. All those are for my $2 and up subscribers on Patreon. So I'm actually got a bunch of those in the works as well. So lots of that stuff I have to work on. Lots of laying out of PDF files and things, which is on my list for this week. Oh, thank you. I think she did come out pretty. I'm just trying to figure out if there's any kind of last tweaks I need to do to really make her kind of stand out. Make sure the coffee looks tasty and things like that. But yeah, I think she came out pretty good. I don't know if I made her like have the prettiest face. I was kind of trying to give her a little more of an angular face and a little, like, she looks very calm now, but I feel like she'd get very mad if you interrupted her little zen coffee moment there. Yeah, that's kind of how I do a piece with brown ink and how I do fairy wings and stuff like that. These are kind of butterfly based fairy wings in design. And my Summoning Creatures book from last year talks about how to do this type of wing and how to do feather wings and bat wings. So I put all the different ones in there. Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I will probably be streaming again later this week. I don't know if I'm gonna get to it tomorrow, but possibly. And I'm definitely gonna set up some more formal events, and they'll be on my website, my Facebook, and I'll send out an email about them for later this week. We're doing a couple of detailed dragon pieces. Probably, I'm thinking we'll do like Thursday and maybe Sunday for those, just to try to give people a variety of time, maybe in the afternoon, so that it kind of splits the difference for people in other time zones. So thank you guys for hanging out, tuning in, supporting the painting of this cute little fairy who's having her coffee. Stay safe. Uh, Obviously, stay safe. Stay home when you can, but make sure you get exercise. Wash your hands. Stay positive. Hopefully, we're in our last month to 6 weeks of this, and we can get back to normal really soon. Thank you guys so much, especially all the Patreon subscribers who tuned in. You guys are awesome, and I will see you again soon.